Thank you very much, Mr. Valadeo. Ms. DeLauro.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Just an aside, I guess anyone who gets a federal subsidy, we ought to just see whether or not they are obese. And if that's the case, let's check into what kind of food they're buying. Let's set up an office of the food police. Anyway, let me move on to the WIC issue. WIC is a lifeline for so many families. More than half the routine formula sold in the U.S., 56% as of 2018, is purchased by participants in the WIC program. There's a March 24 FTC released, Mr. Secretary, a report that concluded that the WIC program and its use of single supplier infant formula state rebate contracts has a significant impact on the U.S. infant formula market. How can the U.S. build a more diverse and resilient infant formula supply? What's your thought on a single supplier infant formula state rebate contract? Does that help to contribute to the consolidation of the infant formula market? And is there a way to increase competition without disrupting the supply chain on infant formula?
Well, I think the other question is whether or not by doing so in this particular case, are you going to increase the cost of the program? Because the rebate system has saved significant monies with reference to the program, which I think is an important consideration. It's a tough business, honestly, in terms of folks, but I think there are additional plants being produced in the United States, and that should increase the supply, which should hopefully mitigate a circumstance like we had to experience several years ago.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to work with you on this because, and I just introduced, legislation that for smaller enterprises, they could get an investment tax credit or a production tax credit in terms of moving forward with providing more competition in the market. So a big issue, I think, and one that is complex. No easy way around it. So let me also on another. I want to ask about the WIC Emergency Contingency Fund. First of all, let me make clear my support for fully funding your request at $7.7 billion for the WIC program. This contingency plan is basically an insurance policy, as I understand it, against a dramatic change in either food costs or in WIC participation. It is not a substitute for full funding. I know that the USDA worked with OMB on developing the program. Can you just kind of walk us through the process in developing the program, why we think this is a good solution to protecting WIC access and participation?
Let me start by talking about how we managed 2024 given the lateness of the budget and the uncertainty about WIC. We actually had to transfer resources from other nutrition programs, and part of the reason why we have the request that we have is to refill those transfers. So it's in addition to the WIC program, it's also to get it back in fiscal order, number one. Number two, we have two different contingency funds. One is a smaller contingency fund designed to address specific state issues. From time to time, states have an issue relative to their ability within WIC to provide the WIC services. So this smaller emergency is designed to be able to provide individual state opportunities. The larger emergency is, to your point, if we are confronted with a circumstance where there's uncertainty or whether the WIC budget is not fully and adequately funded for whatever reason, or we are faced with a shutdown, that we basically have the resources to continue uninterrupted the services that are so important. Mm-hmm. And that's the benefit of the second contingency fund.
And how do you determine in both instances the dollar amount of the assistance?
Well, there's modeling that we do, that the Food Nutrition Service folks do to try to figure out what makes sense, how much will it take to extend it for a month or 2 months based on the history. The best thing, Representative, would be for a budget on September 30th to be passed.
Amen.
It's been since 1995.
Trying, but my understanding is that we will vote at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, 6 months into this fiscal year. So I'm all for September 30th. And anyway, so I'm going to yield back my time. I thank you very, very much, Mr. Secretary.